Hello everyone, my name is Rochelle Innocent and I'm the founder and CEO of Project Purpose. Welcome to our channel. Our community is focused on fostering the intellectual and character development in children. We do this through our parent-child workshops that are focused on 4 themes: autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept, in order to cultivate grit, perseverance, and resilience in each child. And we are thrilled to be offering one of the first of its kind digital, virtual, and continuous learning environments, enabling parents and children to connect from all around the world. At Project Purpose, our overarching mandate is to renew and rebuild family, community, and relationships. Our different social media platforms provide us with an opportunity to have discussions on all topics that relate to family, community, and relationships with ourselves as well as with others, with a primary focus on mental health and education. More precisely, the ways that the institutions of mental health and education play a role and have played a role in our societies at large. These discussions and debates provide us with an opportunity to think critically about what needs to change within these structures for us to live up to our bold slogan: support, protect, and empower each child through youth-focused development, better known as leadership in juvenescence. We recognize that in valuing our children's leadership potential, this also translates as recreating and co-creating environments both socially and politically that will enable our children to thrive. For those of you who are particularly keen on the topic, we also write thought pieces every other Sunday, and we just dropped a thought piece this past Sunday. So definitely meander over to the website and check out our online content. If it is the case that you are looking for a listening alternative, well, we're available on 10 different podcast platforms for your listening leisure, and we provide you with access to the links in the description down below. Now, as is the convention, be sure to subscribe, hit that post notification bell so that you are aware of every time we post. And of course, if you like our conversations and you want to keep them going, like, comment, and share this segment. Let's get into it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And this week, our topic of discussion is mental health. We're going to be having the conversation around control, and I'm guessing that this is going to be a prickly topic because a lot of us have a desire or a need to have control over the world around us, and I was definitely prime candidate for this tendency to need control and to create this sense of control to enable me to feel just much more capable and much more confident as I navigated in the world around myself. I no longer am someone who needs control anymore, and I think that I've recognized, and the only reason why I don't need it anymore, it's not because I've reached some state of enlightenment by any means, because I've recognized very quickly, like through different trials and obstacles that I've experienced in life, that control is illusory. We do not actually have control, but for those who really gravitate towards this need to have control, and not just of themselves, but of the external, whether that's a person, place, or a thing, that becomes really maladaptive and it can really put you in a dark spiral. So I'm really going to talk about the true tenets of control. Sometimes I think that because life is so predictable, because, as we navigate through life, things are coming easily, things are happening without much resistance, we're not dealing with many different obstacles. If that happens for any real period of time, we can convince ourselves or allow ourselves to fall into the false belief that it is because of us, that we are the ones who are managing and manipulating the world around us, and we have control of the world around us. And I'm telling you, if you are someone where you feel like because, everything is responding in alignment with what you desire, because people are jumping at your beck and call, that this actually translates as control, you are wrong, and you are setting yourself up for a downward spiral that's going to hit hard and fast. So I'm here to hopefully curtail that event, and I want you to listen to my reasoning, because sometimes we think control is about cause and effect. We misconstrue responses that are in alignment with what it is that we're looking for as a byproduct, as a cause of the actions we put out in the environment. And I'm here to talk about why that is incorrect, why that is false. And I'm going to talk about that in 3 basic principles. And I think if we recognize the truth, validity of these principles, and they're philosophical, because a sense of control is like this inherent human desire to establish order amongst chaos. I think as human beings, we generally have a very small threshold for chaos. Like that's a muscle that all of us have to develop by varying degrees, but chaos is something that the majority of us need to really build mastery and discipline around. But I think that rather than build mastery and discipline around chaos, we gravitate towards control. And learning how to be agile in chaos, that is healthy. But misconstruing our navigating through chaotic or, orderly situations as us having control over the world around us, that's maladaptive and that's misinformed because it simply isn't true. And I'm here to just talk about the reasons why and talk about like these 3 basic principles that show you that the world is beyond your control. The only person you have control over is yourself, your actions, and even that is limited. That's to a great extent, but to an extent, like you can't control when your heart beats or doesn't beat, like that's beyond your control, like just as an example of why I say to an extent. But I think it's important that we realize that the external world is beyond our realm of control, even if it gives you the sense that you are actually controlling the things around you. So rather than continue on pushing the same point by articulating that point from different vantage points, I'm going to jump into my principles right now. And I love to hear your point of view. I'm sure this is going to garnish lots of engagement, lots of questions, lots of counter positions, and I am all for it. I am telling you in my head, I have gone through this topic 360, which is why I'm super confident in having this conversation with you right here online on my platform. So let's jump into it. The one principle that I think is super key and super critical for us all to keep in mind is that when it comes to the outcomes that we want in life, there's always going to be a probability that it works out and a probability that it doesn't. And we can assign weights to this probability. We can assign attributes, values to these probabilities, but at the end of the day, things either will or they won't work out. And I think recognizing this as a core fundamental truth, and it has nothing to do with you. You can do everything right and it might not work out. You can do everything wrong and it might actually work out. Just recognizing that by way of how the external world responds to your desires, to your objectives, to your goals, it either will or won't transpire. And that could be definitively, that could be at this point in time, that could be, put the conditions, the parameters around it. But for anything that you strive for, it either will or won't work out. And recognizing that that's just something beyond your realm of control. Like you can do everything you can to ensure it does work out. I mean, that's within your control, like managing and moderating your behavior so that things align to what it is you're looking for. But by way of it actually being specifically what you're looking for, like that is actually beyond your realm of control, even if it doesn't seem that way. So I think if we all just recognize that at the end of the day, fundamentally for everything in life, it either will or it won't work out. And that's the way I approach things now. I approach things like, doesn't mean that I'm going to be less dedicated, less disciplined, less focused, but it does mean that I'm much more grounded and the reality of it all, right? Like I'm like, I can put all my time, love, effort, blood, sweat, tears into something. And at the end of the day, it is not a guarantee of a specific outcome. It still either will or won't work out. And I think that is such a core principle that all of us need to use as the lens that we take on in pursuit of our goals. Because when we pursue goals, even with everything we have, when we pursue goals knowing we can give it our all and it either will or won't work out, we're not going to be devastated. We're not going to be picking ourselves up off the floor because we recognize that those are always the 2 potential outcomes and we can prepare ourselves for either or and not for one and just be blind to the other. Like that won't happen for me. I'm in control of the situation. It's going to work out exactly the way I want. It might or it might not. And that is not something you have control over. And I think if you really think deeply about it, then you see what it is that I'm trying to say. And this leads me to my second point. And this point is very deep. I think this is a point where you really need to sit and reflect deeply on what it is that we think power is, right? And my second point is permission. People granting you permission, people giving you permission is not an indication of inherent power. And this one is super critical, is super key, because sometimes get permission quite frequently from people around us around different circumstances. So I'm not sure by way of, the way that you manage the people in your life, the events in your life. I don't know what your moral compass is. I don't know if it is that people are crying while giving you permission or that they're happy to give you permission to do certain things with them. It doesn't matter what tactics that you're leveraging to get that permission. Like, you could be bullying, you could be intimidating, you could be manipulating. At the end of the day, the outcome of that is not an indication of inherent power, because it still involves tactics to get permission. And because you get someone's permission to do something that is either, to their detriment or to their benefit, that point never is erased. There's never a point where that person loses the ability to give you permission. Submission is permission, right? Acquiescence is permission. It could be very dire, very extreme circumstances, and still permission is always a necessary component between action and reaction. There always needs to be a point of permission, a point of surrender. There's a point of surrender. So when I say permission, sometimes we think, voluntary. We're thinking about these extreme situations where there's no way that person gave permission to do that. And I'm like, yes, I'm not discounting the situations where the outcome is definitely not a byproduct of someone giving permission. Like, the action is so violent and so forceful that surrender is inevitable, sort of deal. But I think that none of that is an indication of your power, right? Someone releasing their own power or someone bending because they don't really see another outcome is still someone making a choice about their own power distribution, how much of the power that they have that they're giving out to the world and that they're retaining. And also an indication of someone's perception of their own power as well, which is super important. And sometimes what we do is we manipulate people's perceptions of their power to make it much easier for us to feed the illusion of our capacity to control those around us. But as long as permission is there, right? Even if that permission translates as an outcome that you want to someone else's detriment, it is truly an indicator that permission is not an indication of inherent power to the person who's getting access as a result of that permission. I think that's important because a lot of people think that they're very powerful because a lot of people give them permission to do really terrible things. And not because they want to, it could be intimidation, bullying, it could be doing a lot of terrible things and morally wrong things to get that permission, but there's still permission that you're seeking. There's still that person's will that you're coming up against. And because of that, you can't consider yourself powerful. They still have to give that to you. You can't take it without them giving it to you. I mean, you can try to take it, or it can feel like you are taking it because there's a lot of surrender taking place. But I feel personally that permission is not an indication of the alternate party's inherent power whatsoever. It's an indication of someone's perception of their own power or their own perception of their powerlessness. And again, there are extreme situations where we'd have to make this a bit more of a nuanced argument, but that's the point that I really want to make here around control and feeding this need to control others. You cannot control others. And just because people are giving you permission to do things that maybe are not to their benefit, it's not an indication of your control. That's still something that they're releasing to you based on the situation at hand. I mean, it might not be a significant difference to many people, but for me, it's a very significant difference because it means that if we take the time to ensure that people recognize their power, when people recognize that perception is super important by way of powerlessness, they are never without personal power to choose for their benefit. And that's assuming that they're comfortable or that they're okay or that they recognize that they can push through the circumstances or the consequences that result of that. But that's a key point I wanted to make. I think it's a really important point to make. That's a really important point for us to take home because sometimes we're going to come to face with people who think that they have the right to control us because they've had this cycle of being able to control those around them because they've been getting a lot of permission to do things that are probably not in the best interest of those people who are giving permission because of the different tactics that they're using. But I think that if we all recognize that we're always giving or withholding permission, then we recognize the power in that and we don't allow ourselves to fall into the sense of learned helplessness or powerlessness because we're never without power, right? It's just personal power, it's perceived power, and having a sense of powerlessness gives other people a false sense of power as a result. As we go deeper into this could be its own video, but that's just something that is scratching a little bit more than the surface of the topic, and for you to ponder on your own. And with that said, and I spent a lot of time on that point, I wanted to make sure that my second point was clear, but the last point that I wanted to address in this conversation around understanding the boundaries of control is agility comes with non-attachment. I think that attachment to outcomes comes from a false sense of control. And once you embrace the philosophy that the world around us is not within a realm of control, and you stop being attached to specific outcomes, you immediately become more agile. You become more apt at adapting to things working out or things not working out, because you're not allowing yourself to develop an emotional attachment to the outcome that you desire most. I think that that is the best place to be to deal with a world that's increasingly VUCA, so a world that's increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I think all of us recognizing that, you know what, all we have control over is ourselves and the way that we respond, the way that we maneuver different situations and environments that we find ourselves in. And I think that level of non-attachment, like when something comes up, it wasn't the outcome that we wanted, but what we want, what we desire, is not something that we take into consideration. Right? We recognize that we're going to pursue a specific goal. It either will or won't work out, or maybe it will work out for a little bit and then won't work out. But either way, we're competent and capable of continuing the path onward. And I think that if you want to be that agile, if you want to be able to bounce back, to push forward, to make quick pivots, to have a high degree of complex thinking and critical thinking in fairly time-constrained settings, then you have to become non-attached to the outcome. And I feel like that's something that happens with time, or with, a higher degree of exposure to chaotic situations, a higher degree of exposure to experiences that teach you, that show you that the world is beyond your control. But I think that that all translates into really healthy, really strong skills to navigate an environment that is chaotic. And I think that with recent events, a lot of us are getting a better sense of the depth of the chaos that the world is actually in, and how order can be an illusion that gives a false sense of security. And rather than cuddle in the false sense of security blanket, it's best to embrace the chaos and cultivate the skills to navigate accordingly. In any case, I think that I've talked quite a bit in this video. I think I've shared fairly deep ideas about recognizing the boundaries of inherent control and the boundaries of our control, and pretty much essentially where it ends, but how maladaptive it can be to extend our sense of control beyond where the limits of control actually end. So I want to leave you with that thought. I want you to ponder it and think it over, and hopefully you come to the same conclusion that I've come to, and you start to embrace the journey towards non-attachment, to allow yourself to become more agile in an increasing volatile and uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. All of that to say, that is it for our topic today. Before letting you go, I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that we will be going live at least twice a month, every month for the foreseeable future on our Facebook page. So definitely be sure to join in. We have a registration on our website. You can join in at any point in the calendar year. You can check out the topics that we have put up. And so these events are paid events. So if you do see yourself participating in our community on an ongoing basis, our Game Changer community, then I suggest you purchase one of our package plans. They give you unlimited access to our live events, as well as access to our workshops and webinars over and above those live events. So definitely be sure to check that out. We provided you access to some links so that you can peruse as much as you wish. And that's it for today's segment. I hope that that gave you food for thought, and really think deeply about these ideas. I want to hear your perspective. I want to know your take as well. And let's go back and forth, because I do believe that control can have a really detrimental effect on our mental health if we have a false sense of control and we do things to try to reinforce this idea of control that is illusory, that ends up being very destructive, not only to us, but to those around us. So all of it to say, thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you soon.